to the Autodromo do Algarve here in Portimao in Portugal for the opening race of the 2012 International GT Open season. It is a wet and very windy afternoon here on the Algarve. The rain came in about 5 minutes ago as the cars took to the grid, and since then it's kept coming down. Cars forming up on the grid, and in about 10 minutes time we'll be underway with the first race of the season. This is the longer race of the weekend, the 70-minute race that we've got to look forward to with a capacity 35 car grid. My name's Ben Evans. I'm up here in the commentary box with you throughout the whole season, and joining me this weekend here in Portugal is current Le Mans Series racer James Walker. Good afternoon, James.
Hi Ben, good to see you.
Well, we had a lively qualifying session this morning with Tony Villander in the number 4 AF course car, just claiming pole by 58 thousandths of a second from Philip Pater, alongside him the pair of them in the Ferrari 458 GT Italias. The first of the Porsches was fourth on the grid, and that was the Manthey racing car of Marco Holzer. But James, qualifying this morning was in nice, sunny, still conditions. The rain is coming down here. There's blue skies in the distance, but a big challenge for the teams as well will be the wind.
This really is a huge challenge. We've looked out of our commentary box onto the grid, and it's just been really hectic for the last 5 minutes. As you said, the rain came down about 5 minutes ago. They've had some running in the wet yesterday. You and I were out on track watching, and this track is really difficult in the wet. And you know, we saw the Ferrari's been dominant this morning in qualifying, but this now could be anybody's race, I think.
Certainly could be. So we've got the pace car there at the head of the grid. It's a rolling start as ever in the International GT Open. It's a pit stop race. It's 2 drivers per team. It's everything that you would want from GT racing. There is Raffaele Gianmaria, third on the grid, and he and Miguel Ramos won here at Portimao in this race last year. They were the quickest combination in the wet testing that we had yesterday morning, and they are third on the grid. Some wets and new windscreen wipers being fitted to that car. And for these drivers, James, it is a real challenge, because this rain shower, it came in minutes ago, just as they were getting ready to go out. All of those plans out of the window, and it's time to go to wet weather mode. Yeah,
I mean, the teams would have spent the last 3 or 4 hours since qualifying really getting their race car ready. They would have done some heavy tank runs in qualifying, before qualifying, sorry, but qualifying is done on the light tanks. And now with the heavier cars, with the slicks, we have a harder Dunlop tyre, which is more durable. But for the wet now, it really is going to be a case of those engineers earning their money and setting the cars up for the wet. And hopefully some of the teams did some good running in the wet yesterday, and that will now probably prove to be very important.
It certainly will be, but it's a 70-minute race. The risk is, of course, if it dries out quickly, as and when do you go back to those slick tyres? So we have got the number 2 car there, sitting there fifth on the grid inside of row 3, and the Abu Dhabi Villabor course team of Andrea Montemini and Juan Manuel Lopez, certainly combination to look for throughout the season. A very strong driver combination. The grid beginning to be cleared as we begin the countdown to this opening race of the season. There's the car of Nico Pronk and Peter Cox. It's Nico Pronk who will be starting in that one, but then Peter Cox was on pole position for much of the qualifying session for the second race. That's tomorrow's race, and was only edged out in the very closing stages. If you're new to the International GT Open, then there are 2 classes. We have got the Super GT class. Those are the cars at the front of the field, such as the one driven by Miguel Angel del Castro, and then we've also got the GTS cars, which are about 1.5 seconds a lap slower. So really we get 2 races for the price of 1 here, although in the wet weather some of the quicker GTS drivers just might be finding themselves getting onto the tail of some of the Super GT cars. The form book that we saw written during yesterday afternoon's dry test, the dry qualifying this morning, out of the window. This is a very welcome to the championship this year, the Bilbao Racing Aston Martin of Alvaro Barber, as the start has been delayed for 10 minutes. So the start's been delayed for 10 minutes, and that could just be because we have got our commentary position here. It's at the start and finish line pretty much, and we've got a clear view out towards the southwesterly direction where the wind is coming from, and probably about 3 miles away it's the perfect spring day in terms of the weather. So the teams, having come to the grid and having put on those wet tyres, now with a delayed start for 10 minutes, may just find themselves deciding to wait to see what happens, and if it begins to dry out, maybe gamble slicks on the start. But it's a difficult call for the teams, James, even with this extra 10-minute wait.
It is, and you can even see, like you said, we're looking out onto the pit straight here, and you can see, which you very rarely see in GT racing, there was one of the cars actually came to the grid on slick, so that showed you how late the rain came. But behind the grandstand in front of us, that blue sky really is starting to peak out, and this start delay is probably due to the officials making sure that all the teams are ready for the start. It's not in their interest to have teams unprepared, and you can see the teams now stood on the grid just awaiting that start.
And in your experience as a driver in these GT races, you're on the radio to the team. What are you saying at this point? You know the start's been delayed.
The key thing is to really keep calm. As long as everyone's done their job, these scenarios shouldn't be too hectic, but it's when people and the teams aren't that organised that these can cause problems. But if it was me in those cars, I'd just be there trying to keep calm. Like you said, talk to your engineer on the radio. They should have a plan. This shouldn't really change the plan too much, although with the switch between wets and slicks.
So we've got the starting grid here with Tony Villander on pole position and Philip Pater alongside him. Then Raffaele Gianmaria and Marco Holzer, Juan Manuel Lopez in fifth, and Miguel Angel Del Castro, tipped by some for a challenge for pole position earlier on, but he didn't quite come through in qualifying. But the times so close, with the top five covered by just about a second. Alvaro Barber in the Aston Martin then in seventh, and Alexander Taukanitsa Senior in the Ferrari 458. They've made a big jump in performance over the winter, the AT Racing team, and both Alexander Taukanitsa Senior and Junior looking very impressive in testing yesterday and qualifying this morning. Cesar Campanchao in the Audi R8. Again, that car looking really very impressive earlier on. Daniel Zampieri, the first of the GTS runners, and Zampieri moving over from the World Series by Renault for this year, getting to grips with GT racing very quickly. He's just ahead of the slightly more experienced in GT cars, but also former single-seater racer Stefano Pizzari. 13th on the grid, and we were expecting them to be a lot higher than this, is the IMSA Performance Malmö Porsche of Ramon Narak and Patrick Piet. It's Ramon Narak who starts the race, and they're only down in 13th position. When they last competed in the International GT Open back in 2010, they claimed 4 victories, and the year before that, they claimed 6. So we've got the rest of the grid coming together. Iraj Alexander in 19th position, who has previously had Le Mans racing experience, together with considerable experience both in GT cars and also single-seaters. The Swiss driver, Andrea Cecchileo, as well, chasing Alexander throughout qualifying. Marcello Puglisi in the Lotus Evora, one of the Super GT cars. The Evora has been looking very good through the corners this weekend in the hands of Puglisi and his co-driver Johnny Molan, but unfortunately along the straights they've been giving away up to 20 kilometres an hour, and that's what's seen them slipping down into 25th on the grid. The multicoloured Mosler of Rafael Unzuragaza in 31st place, with 35 cars taking to the grid for the start of this race. The formation lap will be getting underway in 7 minutes' time at 15:05, and then the race, we're hearing, is likely to be starting behind the safety car. It will be starting behind the safety car. We've just had confirmed from race control. And again, from your point of view as a driver, James, is that a help or a hindrance in these conditions?
I think if you're at the front of the grid, I think it's definitely a help, because you're the first person to arrive at the aquaplaning or the puddle, so it really is good to try and find out where the water is. But as you said, we're just seeing from the officials now there's going to be 2 laps under the safety car to understand the condition of the circuit. But yeah, if you're starting at the front, you really don't want any surprises as you're heading down to turn 1 on the first lap.
That said, our front row of the grid, Tony Villander and Philip Pater, vastly experienced. Tony Villander dovetailing this season in the International GT Open with the GT1 World Championship last year. He was second in his class at Le Mans, finishing 13th in the race overall. Talking to him after qualifying this morning, he was very relaxed and immediately out of the car, having set pole position, straight out of the car, immediately debriefing Federico Leo. You wouldn't have known he just set pole position for a major international GT race. He was so relaxed when he got out of the car. Philip Pater alongside him on the front row of the grid, another very experienced GT racer over many years of competition. And Philip, we will be looking to see how he challenges in the early stages. I think he felt after practice that given how slender the margin was for pole position, second place was hardly a disaster, and he was hoping that he'd be able to jump Tony Villander at the start. That is now looking slightly less likely for Philip Pater. So we're getting the 5-minute call here on the grid before the cars go off on their formation lap. And they've got obviously those couple of laps behind the safety car before the race can get underway in earnest. And I guess that the drivers, James, be using those laps to really find out where the grip is, where it isn't, maybe trying some different lines so that when the race does go green, they can be on it straight away. Yeah,
the main thing really is for them to get some tyre temperature. And with these big heavy cars, the main way of doing that is actually not to do these little weaves in the straight. It's actually to weave at high speed and also to use the brake to generate that heat through the core of the tyre, through the rim, that actually radiates out into the carcass of the tyre. And that is, it sounds a lot easier than it is. Certainly when the circuit's wet like this, at least we've got 2 laps, which is normally why they do it, 2 laps in the wet. And as we saw in qualifying, even on slick tyres with the cold temperatures, people were spinning all over the place. So the wet, you really do have to be careful.
The championship running on Dunlop control tyres. It's quite a hard compound in the slicks, as you were saying, James. And this morning we were seeing in qualifying where the air temperature was about 13, 14 degrees, something like that. It was taking them 6 or 7 laps to get the tyres warm enough to really attempt a flying lap. And these wets, likewise, it will take them a few laps just to get the heat and the confidence. Well, certainly everybody is going to be looking to start on those wet tyres, and you can't blame them. I think it would be a bit too much of a gamble to switch to slicks. But then if the teams could see what we can see, which is the blue sky up behind the grandstand, then we could be seeing very early tyre changes in this race back to those slick tyres. So the formation lap getting underway very shortly. The start will be, when the safety car does peel in, it will be an inline 1-by-1 start. It won't be a side-by-side rolling start as we normally expect in the dry conditions. So it will be a 1-by-1 start, which the organisers will be hoping will mean that they will be slightly more restrained as they arrive into turn 1. If you're unfamiliar with the Autodromo do Algarve here in Portimao, then we have got the start finish line. It's on a tabletop, really. You come then down a very steep decline into turn 1, James. And we were seeing yesterday during the wet testing that the drivers just getting the feel for how late they could break into that first corner.
Yeah, as we said, you and I were lucky enough to get out there yesterday and watch these guys practicing in the wet. And we actually stood down at the apex of turn 1, and that steep hill down towards turn 1 in the wet really causes people to lock up and run wide. And you can, if you run wide there, get on the curb and you lose a huge amount of time and traction down to turn 3. Then you come back up the hill, up through turn 4. You've got the reasonably long back straight and a very bumpy braking area down into the hairpin of turn 5. And that's going to be an area, again, where I think as the race goes on, people are going to get more confident there. We then come back up the hill, and we've got a lot of sweeping up and down all the way for the rest of the lap. So it is really a fantastic circuit. I love it.
It really is. Undulations all the way here at Portimao. We see Archie Hamilton sitting in the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche, one of the front runners in the GTS class. And we were talking to the team at length last night. They are quietly confident about claiming the class victory here. Archie making the move up into the International GT Open last year, having previously competed in Porsche racing in the UK, also Formula Renault racing in the UK. It's a big step up for Archie Hamilton, but thus far this weekend he's been more than equal to it.
Yeah, I was just thinking about who the favourite for this race is for me. If the conditions are like this, even though the Ferraris have shown great pace in the dry, just the way the Porsche seems to suit the wet conditions with really good traction, good top line speed for the race, I think I'm going to put my money on Holzer and Tandy for this race.
It's a brave move to be putting any money on anybody, I think, as the thunder begins. The car's firing up. We're very shortly going to be getting the first of the pace laps underway here, and we'll be able to get a view out onto the track to exactly how wet it is, because we saw yesterday when we had the rain, and then as the conditions changed, we were having some sections of the circuit that were drying out very, very quickly, and you say, yep, that's suitable for slicks. There are others which were still damp several minutes later, and it will be a bit of a gamble for the drivers as and when they have to change the tyres. So the pace lap getting underway momentarily. To the left-hand side of your screen, that is the red AF Corsa Ferrari of the pole sitter Tony Villander. Alongside him on the front row of the grid, the Wasp livery, the black and yellow Kessel Racing machine of Philip Pater. And then on the third row of the grid, it's the black racing car of Raffaele Giammaria, last year's race winner. And then the car that James has been picking out for you, the Manthe Racing Porsche, which is the bright yellow and green machine. The race clock has started. We've got the safety car start. We've got 2 laps behind the safety car as the field moves away. And you can see that steep drop into turn 1. Drivers just tentatively feeling where that grip is. And also be well advised to stay well clear of those curbs, because they'll retain the water and they will be very slippery, James.
Yeah, and I was just going to actually interrupt you there and say how good it is to see a huge grid here this weekend. It's very easy to underestimate how difficult it is to get all these teams to one place, and it really is a healthy grid here this weekend. It's fantastic to see.
It is the championship going from strength to strength. It's multi-mark GT racing at its very best. And the drivers absolutely love it. We were talking to them really throughout yesterday, and again during lunchtime today. They couldn't wait for the racing to get underway. Every driver was moaning about the performance of the other marks. So the Ferrari driver was saying, well, the Porsches are doing this, this and this.
Yeah, that's always the case.
The Porsche driver saying, yes, but the Ferrari's doing this. And from your perspective, James, somebody who currently races a Ferrari 458, what would you be doing differently in the wet behind the wheel than you would be in the dry?
Well, it's very difficult to explain. It all depends on how much track grip there is. You can see the guys now looking offline for the grip. That's where the rubber isn't normally, and that's sometimes going to be a grippier part of the circuit. So they would have learned the majority of this during testing, but they're just seeing now, trying to get as much tyre temperature. Like I said, riding the brake a little bit, trying to heat the tyre from the inside as well as the surface temp with weaving. But there seemed to be yesterday quite a few of the Porsche guys finding that grip offline, certainly down at turn 1. And you can see now the shine coming off the circuit, that there's a lot of standing water in these dips that you're seeing now.
We've had a huge amount of rainfall in the last few hours. The black cloud you can see over the back of the grandstands in that last shot, that is the shower that we've just had here. But then as they come back down the hill towards the start and finish line, it is clear blue skies now emerging here at Portimao. And you never want a race with changeable conditions. Talking to Tony Villander after qualifying, he said, do you want it to be wet, do you want it to be dry? He said, I don't care, as long as it's not somewhere in between. And unfortunately, that's exactly what he's got. It's always difficult, James, but first race of the season, it's even more tricky.
It is. I mean, for me, one of the most difficult driving conditions is either when you're on slick tyres and it starts raining, or you've got to make a wet set of tyres last as the track is drying. And I think that's going to be the issue today. These guys are all starting on wet, and it's going to be a driver call to tell the team when they're ready for slicks, and it's probably going to be the braver of the 35 or so that we've got here today. And all the teams then always, and we've seen in Formula 1 a lot, the teams then look for the purple sectors starting to spring up on the timing screens of when they can then tell their driver that people are going quick on slicks.
Well, this is one of those times where you really can't buy experience. This is when you want the likes of Philip Pater, with decades really of GT racing experience under his belt, behind the wheel of the car, feeding back to the team exactly what the conditions are doing. And particularly the likes of Kessel Racing, the likes of A, of course, they've got several cars in this race, some in the Super GT class, some in the GTS class, and they can take the call from more experienced drivers really as a benchmark for the rest of the squad. So we're on the second of the laps here behind the safety car, and then the action is about to get underway. We are, of course, live on the internet, and if you go to www.live.gtopen.net, that is live.gtopen.net, and log in. We are on live chat and Twitter throughout the course of the weekend, so if you've got any questions for James and myself here in the commentary box, then do log in through the live stream, and we'll be happy to answer those during the course of the race. That's live.gtopen.net. So any questions for either of us during the race, then please do join. There's already a good number of people who have logged in, enjoying the chat and the discussion in the build-up to the action. Also, we're both on Twitter. You can tweet to @JamesWalker_, so @ and then James Walker, all one word, with the _, or @BenCommentator, all one word, @BenCommentator, all one word. We've got one casualty into pit lane already. That is the Mosler of Rafael Unguzara, and so he is into the pits. Hopefully he will re-emerge. Unguzara, experienced racer both in the Renault Megane Euro Cup and also in GT racing. He was qualified towards the back of the grid anyway, so he's not lost out too much if he's able to rejoin quickly. Right, the safety car is going to be in this lap. It's now Tony Villander backing the pace up. They will come down into the descending hairpin at turn 14. They'll come out of turn 14 and through the very quick turn 50. It's the far turn of the track. The road really falls away. And if you're in Tony Villander's position, James, at what point would you pull the pin and say, right, now's the moment to go up to racing speed?
Yeah, this is a really good chance for him to be really clever here. Once the safety car comes in, the rule is that the lead car becomes the safety car, so he can judge the pace and with a long sweeping right-hander coming onto the pit straight here, it's really, really easy for him to try and back everybody up, kind of feint a few moves to accelerate brake, and then try and catch them unaware. And you can see he's probably doing that now, but
Okay, so we're about to get underway here. They are heading down into turn 15. We're about to go racing for the first time in 2012. And away goes Villander. He pulls the pin nice and early. The spray kicked up the field, driving through the murk as Tony Villander at full throttle blasts through and into the first racing lap of the season with Philip Pater in hot pursuit. The pair of them trying to pull clear of Rafael Gianmaria with their Marco Holzer in the spray behind Gianmaria in fourth position. They descend into turn 1, the leading quintet really as they were. A couple of jostling for places behind the good sense Lamborghini, just about holding its position. That's Jose Ramos, who maintains place in the 82 Lamborghini Gallardo. Alvaro Barber in Portimao Racing. Aston Martin tiptoes through turn 3. Now they come through the left-hander at turn 4, up over the crest, and then down into the steep decline into the hairpin at turn 5. Villander already trying to put a little bit of daylight between himself and Philip Pater, with then Gianmaria and Holzer looking to the inside. Here's Miguel Angel de Castro, and I think he's lost the place to Alvaro Barber, in fact. So Alvaro Barber's elevated himself up into 6th position. Castro trying to get that back. This has been the perfect start for Villander, James.
yeah, I'll be very impressed that everyone actually got through those first few turns unscathed there. The guys are realising this is a long race, it's a 70-minute race, and they've got to be there at the end to have any chance of the results. They're really trying to see what they've got underneath them, really. These cars haven't been raced in anger, obviously, for a while, and some of the guys are new, so this is a key part of the race not to make a mistake.
So they come up the hill into turns 10 and 11. It's really just a double apex right-hander. There's Rafael Gianmaria. We've got a replay of a big slide, and around we go. It's the Ford GT, which rotates.
He did well to keep it out of the wall there.
He did, so a scary moment there for the Ford. Losing a few places, but otherwise no harm done. That was Matteo Stumpf in the Ford GT. Still Villander leads as pressure being applied from the AF course car. Stefano Pizzari looking to gain places. Another replay. Who is that? It is one of the Lamborghini Gallardos into the barrier. I think that could have been Nico Kronk. It is Nico Kronk who's got around it and he's into the barrier. So just as we were saying, they've been well behaved. Fortunately, some of those a little bit lower down the order, running into issues early on. Already we've got something like a dry line emerging almost in the soft pit straight. These cars kicking up so much spray in the sunshine. Down the hill, plenty of jostling for position. There's Rem on the rack in the number 16 Magnum Porsche, who is hot on the tail of Stefano Pizzari. Pizzari in the GTS class. And Ranch is competing in the Super GT. There is Nico Kronk. I think the tracking is now somewhat out on that car. And yes, he has no option, unfortunately, but to, yeah, pull that.
That's a real shame. Peter Scott's obviously shown great pace in the second qualifying this morning, and obviously they're sharing the car. That would be really disappointed that he's not going to get a go himself at the race today. But the main thing is, as we're stood here now, it is bright blue sky on the pit straight, and I can see this circuit starting to drive very quickly. As Villander already has a 1.8 second lead.
So Tony Villander running away from it. We've got Lopez coming under real pressure. Alvaro Barber runs out wide on the curve. That is going to allow De Castro to potentially challenge, and they rise up over the crest and weaving and bobbing for position. Is Barber, he's looking to challenge Manuel Lopez. He moves to the inside, but Lopez shuts the door firmly in his face, and there's nothing that Barber can do. So instead he has to settle in behind him. This is brilliant racing. 4 cars running pretty much line astern in very, very tricky conditions, because every time that Barber attempts to challenge, he's opening up the opportunity for De Castro to challenge him as well. It's the black Racing on Aston Martin of Alvaro Barber, which is second in that queue. He is looking very aggressive. Also, Cesar Campanchao in the number 81 LDR8 going well.
And you can see there, sorry to interrupt, and you can see the last 2 corners, how much grip Barber has offline. He's been turning the car a lot later, cutting back inside the Ferrari and having far much better traction on the way out offline. That's going to have a huge effect if he can do the same thing onto the pit straight.
Well, certainly finding the grip is Rafael Gianmaria. He's in the slipstream here behind Philip Pater, looking to challenge for second position. Down into turn 1 they go. Pater holds on. Right, here comes the Barber battle. He's actually not had such a good run through turn 15. We've got Ram on the Ratch looking to challenge, as again Gianmaria looks into the Philip Pater. He's going to go through here, is he? Turn 3 of Philip Pater's got the inside line for turn 4, so they come up through the left hand over the brow and then down into the head of turn 5. He can overtake Pater. Turns the hairpin, keeps the pressure on, just about gets his bonnet up the inside. This is great racing. They're still almost side by side as they climb out to turn 5, through turn 6. They'll be down a little to turn 7. This is the battle going on further behind. Do they all safely make it through the hairpin? They do, just about. Daniel Zampieri doing well to be in that battle. As Gian Maria really joins, he's weaving all over the circuit. It's much quicker than Philip Pater. He just can't yet find a way through.
Yeah, he actually ran quite deep through the quick turn 7 into turn 8 there and managed to just collect it and get back onto the circuit. But you can see he's really starting to be held up now. In the lap times that we're seeing on the timing screen, we've got Villander lapping 58.7, Pater in the 2-minute 0. So Villander
and
really
we've got a sorriest spin from Miguel de Castro. As Barber went through, de Castro tried to follow as well past Juan Manuel Lopez. He spun it, and as he stalled it, the car is bottoming out on the curbs. He looks to rejoin. Everybody avoids him. He does rejoin, but unfortunately Miguel Angel de Castro in the number 6 car, the DriveX School machine, spinning down the order. Villander continues to lead, and the battle behind somewhat scattered, so quick place on the circuit as well to spin through turn 9, not somewhere that you want to go off. Right, here's the replay. So we've seen Alvaro Barber go through. De Castro tries the same move. Well, Lopez, he had to turn into the corner, James.
Yeah, he had to, but he was really quite kind there because he's actually spun avoiding contact there. So it was, even though he's ended up spinning, it was quite good driving by him not to make contact.
Well, we also saw that moment you're alluding to, James, with Gian Maria behind Philip Pater, taking a very wide line, somewhat unintentionally. Right now, we've got the Aston Martin clear of Barber. Can he turn through as Philip Pater still comes under pressure from Gian Maria? And Gian Maria's got a good run again through turn 3, but Philip Pater uses the twists and turns, the Portimao circuit, to work in his favour. But Gian Maria then looks to carry the run over the brow here, get the inside line down the hill towards the hairpin. He's alongside here, and he's going to go through and take second position. So Raffaele Gian Maria moving into second place. Great move from the Italian driver. And he gains the place on Philip Pater. And now he seeks to pull away from Pater, but again he runs wide through turns 7 and 8. Out on the curve, he just about gathers up, but this, once more, gives Pater the opportunity to challenge.
Yeah, he really needed to do that move when he did, because Villander is disappearing off into the distance. He has a 4.4 second lead now. And again, yeah, two laps in a row, carrying too much speed through turn 7. And it's not a corner where you can really gain that much time, but you can lose a hell of a lot of time. And you've always got to make sure you're nice and tidy for turn 8.
That's a real shame. Into the pit lane, unfortunately, we lose the ASM team, McLaren of Antonio Coimbra, who is into the pits. Work to be done. Juan Manuel Lopez coming under pressure once more from the Nova driver, Aldi Race, and also Ramon Narach in the Porsche using conditions to his favour. Marco Holzer is not too far adrift now of the fight for second place. So Raffaele Gian Maria, who was 4th in last year's championship, he got the one win. That came here at Portimao, and he's also got 2 wins back in 2010 at Monza and Spa. So Villander through to complete the 6th lap of the race, and already he's picked up a huge advantage over Gian Maria. 5 seconds, half second back is Philip Pater, and then Marco Holzer not too far adrift as well. We've got this huge scrap going on behind, being headed up by Alvaro Barber in 5th position. Then the clock back to Juan Manuel Lopez, who's just having to defend from really the cork in the bottle. He's really being chased down by the others, because already Daniel Zampieri has got through past Lopez. Zampieri up into 6th position. Let's not forget here, James, Daniel Zampieri, he's in a GTS car, which in the drive was 1.5 seconds lap slower.
They are, but I actually think the wet really brings out the skill of the driver more so than the car. The second and a half gap between the cars is huge, but the driver really can make it, picking the right part of the circuit, being very careful under braking, not to lock up, and I think the wet really brings out the talent of the driver, I think.
Daniel Zampieri racing last year in the Watches by Renault, very nearly losing the rear of the car. Down to hairpin as we get the move from Cesar Sampagnol in the Audi R8. He moves up ahead of Juan Manuel Lopez, who then runs a little bit wide onto the curbs. That is potentially going to give Ramon Narach the opportunity to challenge the Frenchman all over the tail of the Argentinian driver as they climb through turn 6, down towards turn 7, where they are now, and then on into turn 8. And then just behind Narach, we've got Stefano Bizzarri. Bizzarri, another of the drivers in the GTS cars, could have a run here on the Macbeth Racing Porsche, which ran wide, a couple of wheels onto the curb, down such a steep drop that is, into turn 9 before they begin the long climb once more up towards turn 10. fantastic racing we're getting in these early stages. The drivers finding the grip somehow, and they are wheel to wheel all over the place. Very wide line there from Lopez. It gives Narak the opportunity up the inside. No way through, though.
Again, you can see Narak there just driving offline on the exit, and he had such better traction than the Ferrari inside it. You can see him doing it again, accelerating on the left-hand side offline as they actually lap one of the Spanish GT cars, most of them.
Yeah, so Rafael Gonzalez out into the race. Glad to see that, but he is already some way down as again. Naracha's got the run here on Lopez. They turn down through turn 15. That's incredibly brave. You want to try to overtake there. Instead, you look to get a good run, and that's exactly what Naracha's got. We are following through the 82 Good Sense Lamborghini Gallardo, but in fact the best run of all came from Stefano Bizzarri, who pulls alongside the Porsche. Is he going to go through here? He leads him across the start and finish line, and that is the move up into 9th place from Stefano Bizzarri, but they come down the hill in towards turn 1. He's got the inside line. He just drives as wide a car as possible. Nothing the Ratch can do, and he loses the place with Jose Texera in very close company behind Alvaro Barber. Also under pressure from Daniel Zampieri. Don't know where to watch here for the battles in this race. The exception being Tony Villander in the lead of the race, who continues to pull away from Rafael G. Maria in 2nd position. Now that Bizzarri has passed Narak, can he hold on to that place? Also, this is a good drive from the Audi R8 to Cesar Campantiao, because he's already close straight onto the tail of Alvaro Barber and Daniel Zampieri.
Yeah, this group's always going to be very close, and they've really got to try and settle down and try and pull away from the guys behind them. But as we're looking at the timing screens again, the times have just started to drop off slightly. They were lapping in the 58s at the front, now they're in the 2-minute 5s. And again, looking out the window now, this really is starting to drive very quickly. The cars are already searching for wet patches on the pit straight.
And they're already as well having the confidence to go out onto the white lines, out onto the curbs. They really are finding the grip for it. Zampieri thinks about launching a move up the inside of Alvaro Barber. He can't quite squeeze through. He certainly tried. He had 2 wheels out onto the curbs, but he's got the inside lines. They plunge down the hill towards turn 13. No way through there. Into turn 13 they come now. It's turn 12, and he goes through up the inside into turn 13. Zampieri goes through. We could also see the Audi R8 try and squeeze past as well. Not quite so. Daniel Zampieri moves up into 5th position. Although Alvaro Barber looking to fight back, he runs very, very wide instead, and that enables Cesar Campantiao in the Audi R8 to move past him. Into the pit lane we have got the Ray Racing team, and that is Hugo Godinho in the Ferrari 430. As this scrap for 5th position blasts through and on to complete the 8th lap of the race. We go back to the fight for 2nd, 3rd and 4th. And I have to say, James, Gio Maria seemed to be so much quicker than Philip Pace when he's behind him. Now he's got past, he just can't pull away.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Literally in the last 2 or 3 minutes, I think we've seen the track change quite a lot. We saw the approach of Barber at the beginning of the race, driving offline, getting straight and having good traction. Has literally lost him time in the last couple of minutes, and we've now seen the track change, or people's tyres are now coming in, the car's setup is suiting the tyre balance they've got, but now people that were struggling 5 minutes ago are now quicker, and vice versa. It's very interesting.
So Philip Pater in 3rd position, Marco Holzer there in 4th place in the Mappley Racing. Holzer alongside Nick Taddy, one of the strongest driver pairings you would say in the field. Holzer last year 8th in his class in Le Mans 24 Hours. And the year before, he was 3rd in class. He was also the first winner of the Formula BMW World Series, Marco Holzer, back in 2005. That won him a BMW Formula 1 test drive. Still, the fights continue. Stefano Bizzarri has now got Juan Manuel Lopez on his tail. Right now, Philip Pater, 3rd place on the tail of Rafael G. Maria. To all intents and purposes, these cars are pretty much identical, so it's going to come down, I guess, to 2 things, James. 1 is driver confidence, and 2 is any setup tweaks the team's made on the grid.
Yeah, I mean, these like I said, these conditions really do bring out a lot in the driver, but now we're seeing those top 4 are kind of in a little class of their own, lapping within a second of each other in the 2-minute 1s, and then we've got a gap for the 2-minute 3s of Zampieri, and that, again, this is a key part of the race where they're losing time now. They've got to dig in, stay out of trouble, as we see one of the Ferraris running wide there and stopping, I think.
Yeah, so it's one of the Vodafone Ferraris. Couldn't quite pick up the number on that one, but unfortunately, problems for that car and their race, to all intents and purposes, coming to a premature end. We've still got 50 minutes of racing to go here in the Algarve, with this fight for 2nd and 3rd place between Rafael G. Maria and Philip Pater. G. Maria in the black machine, and Philip Pater in the yellow and black number 11 car. He's got going to see the challenge. We have a replay, though, of Juan Manuel Lopez being quite assertive in his defence there from Stefano Bizzarri.
He definitely was. He wasn't having anything, was it? He turned in no matter what, and they had a little bit of contact, but you can kind of get away with it sometimes with these cars. And
Lopez has now been shuffled down the pack. Bizzarri's through. Narach is through. We've got Jose Teixeira in the good sense. Lamborghini, the next man, trying to pick his way through, although Teixeira not helping his cause by running out over the AstroTurf edge of turn 4. So they come down into the hairpin at turn 5. Juan Manuel Lopez partnering this season with Andrea Montermini, a very quick driver pairing, and certainly when Andrea takes over the car in the second half of the race, we can expect to see fireworks from him as Ramon Narach making amends for that poor qualifying performance. The McLaren is back out there. It's a lap down as the two Ferrari 458s blast through. Jim Rea and Philip Pater still exactly as they were.
I think what this shows, Ben, is that Philip Pater's car's got probably more of a dry setup on it's now coming into its own, really. And like we say, he got caught and passed quite quickly by Gian Maria, but now he's really pressuring Gian Maria as they come down the big drop onto the pit straight.
The car's just sliding the rears as they crest the hill. The balance just going away from them. Pater has got a reasonably good run here. Rafael Gian Maria is not going to be close enough this time around. So 10 laps consigned to the history books in this opening race of the 2012 International GT Open. It is Tony Villender who leads it in car number 4. In second place, it's that man, number 10, Rafael Gian Maria, with in third, number 11, Philip Pater, right on his tail. Fourth place, we've got the number 8, Manthey Racing Porsche of Marco Holzer, and then in fifth place, leading the GTS class, number 44, and that is Daniel Zampieri. And Villender, last time around though, a little bit slower from him at 2 minutes 4, sitting on timing screen. So here is Tony Villender, the race leader. He's all on his own, and I just wonder whether those tyres are going away from Tony as we get a challenge now for second, and Philip Pater looks the inside into turn 5. Through he goes. He takes the place back from Rafael Gian Maria, but then Gian Maria looks to get on the power nice and early, try and get the switch back, and he immediately reclaims second position as they jink through turn 6 and then down the hill towards turn 7. Are we going to see Pater able to challenge him again? Yes, Gian Maria unsettling himself on the curbs. He just about keeps the car on the racing line. I'm surprised he was able to make it through to turn 8, more or less on the racing line, and then go up over the big jump, down the dipper, and into the very quick turn 9 before they climb up the hill towards the double apex right-handers. Turns 10, 11. Here we see another angle. Philip Pater to the inside. Rafael Gian Maria on the switchback straight away. Textbook racing really for the pair of them. Yeah,
I mean, you could just see how on the limit Pater was there braking as he makes his way through the quick turn 12 up the hill, and these two really are kind of slowing themselves up now, and we've got Holzer in the background hoping that the two of them make a mistake and he can make the most of it.
Well, that's the real key for them. They can't fight too much amongst themselves because Marco Holzer is going to take full advantage of that. So second, third and fourth absolutely together on the road. This is exactly the kind of racing we were hoping for as they are through to complete another lap. And Gian Maria this time settling into the slipstream behind Philip Pater with Marco Holzer in the Porsche very much there as well. They come up the crest and onto the tabletop of the pit straight here at Portimao, and already Pater going very defensive, also looking for the wet section of the circuit, so he's got the inside line as they plunge now down in towards turn 1, and Gian Maria looks to the inside, shows himself in Philip Pater's mirrors, but he's not quite close enough to challenge. He's then on into his tail through turn 1. They accelerate on towards turn 2, no overtaking there, possibly turn 3. Again, Gian Maria twitching the car under braking. He is as close as you like, and then probably a little bit closer still onto the tail of Philip Pater, who is all over the road in defence from Rafael Gian Maria. So they accelerate onto the hairpin at turn 5, overtaking opportunity here, and already Pater defends from Gian Maria. He's looking to the inside. They come down into the hairpin, but Gian Maria not quite close enough. And James, Marco Holzer there in 4th position. All the while, he's not having to push here. These two are just racing themselves back into his clutches, really.
Yeah, he's not really having to push, but you could see then on that short back straight how he was looking for the wet part of the track, really trying to cool those tyres. And these two Ferraris, as they're fighting each other and their rear tyres start to chew themselves up, I guarantee that Porsche, with its really good traction, is going to really kind of make their way. I think he'll make his way past these two cars as the tyres go off.
Well, we'll see if that proves to be the case. 45 minutes remaining here, and Philip Pater in 2nd position, just ahead of Rafael Gian Maria, and then Marco Holzer, who every time we see that green and yellow Porsche just seems to be a little bit closer to the tail of the two dicing Ferraris. Ahead of him, they come down out of turn 11 and on through turn 12. turn 13. Well, we didn't think it was an overtaking opportunity. We've seen already in the race it most certainly is. And then turn 14, the hairpin right-hander, which plunges downhill mid-apex. Very tricky corner for the drivers. They have to get it absolutely spot on, because that really is the key to carrying the speed down the start and finish straight. And then on to the very rapid turn 15. The car's just going light over the crest there. And you can see the two Ferraris, James, sliding offline. The Porsche absolutely glued to the correct racing line.
Yeah, I mean, normally in the dry conditions, the 458 is a very, very well-balanced car in the high speed. That's where we really have our advantage. But the Porsche there, whether it's just because it's looked after its tyres, just that little bit better, really good through the last corner. And again, to reiterate what we were saying before, we've got about a 6-second gap now from Villander to Petter. And the three that we're watching now are covered by about a second. But then we've got about a 20-second gap to the rest of the field. So these top four really are pulling away.
They are absolutely sprinting away from the rest of the pack. Daniel Zampieri is still in 5th position in the leader of the GTS class. It's been a great drive from Daniel. Fight for 2nd, 3rd and 4th just momentarily is calming itself down a little bit. I think all three drivers probably putting aside thoughts of fighting position, actually now beginning to think about preserving those tyres. The lap times more or less in the 2-minute 1, 2-minute 2 territory.
But more importantly, Ben, sorry, this has been one of the first laps in a long time that Philip Petter's actually lapped quicker than Tony Villander, so we're going to have to keep an eye on what Villander's doing with his tyres, and whether those times are starting to going to creep towards the pack behind him, because he's now got a 5.9 second lead. But as we know, there was one lap where he lost a total of 4 seconds, so we didn't really see that on the TV, so he must have made a mistake. But this gap now is not really extending, so it's going to be key to see whether Petter, now he's got back in front of Gia Maria, can actually catch Villander.
Well, the car's circulating currently 17 seconds a lap slower than they were in qualifying this morning, and Gia Maria is really dropping back here from Philip Pater. So Rafael Gia Maria, his tyres could be going away from him. He's now very much into the clutches of Marco Holzer. So what was the fight for 2nd, 3rd and 4th is now the fight for 3rd and 4th, as Marco Holzer, the young German driver, closing up onto the tail of Rafael Gia Maria. Well, Gia Maria, though, vastly experienced in both single-seaters and in GT cars. Back in his Formula 3000 days, he was on the podium in Monaco, so he knows about having to keep the car tight and drive in difficult conditions. Right, the pit window is open. The teams can now pit in as and when they want to change drivers. And this, being the first race of the season, doesn't have the pit stop penalties that we see later on in all the subsequent races, where additional time is added to the top 3 cars in each class to even things out over the course of the season. We have a replay of some ebullient driving in an Aston Martin, just lapping the Ford GT that was a little bit errant earlier on. Marco Holzer, he will hand over to Nick Tandy, and that is a very quick driver combination where I think arguably you'd say that Michael Brzezinski, who will take over from Philip Pater, and Miguel Ramos, who Rafael Gia Maria will hand over to. They're quick drivers, but they would both quite happily admit that they're gentleman drivers. They're not professional racing drivers, and Nick Tandy very much is. Therefore, really, the programme for Philip Pater and Rafael Gia Maria is to try and get as much of a gap over Marco Holzer as they possibly can before they come in for the pit stops. It's working just about for Philip Pater. It really isn't at the moment for Rafael Gia Maria, because he's still got Holzer on his tail. Holzer windscreen wipers away, but we have got now, looking at our commentary box, pretty much completely dry start to finish straight, as we've got the first of the pit stops. It's Andrea Montermini who takes over from Juan Manuel Lopez. So Montermini, the former Formula 1 driver for Simtech, 40 Corsa and Pacific. He was also a Ferrari test driver back in the early 1990s. He takes over. We have got Philip Pater in second. We've got a challenge for third, I thought, from Marco Holzer. He really is now right on the tail of Gia Maria.
Yeah, you could see how much grip Holzer has there, how much dive the Porsche has. And again, last lap through this corner here, the downhill right-hander, he had a little bit of turn in oversteer. So again, you can see how hard he's pushing, but he really is feeling like he's getting stuck behind him now as we have another pit stop.
And that is the father and son combination of Alexander Talkanitsa Senior and Junior. So Alexander Talkanitsa Senior out of the car, his son hopping in. And he was looking very good actually in free practice yesterday and qualifying this morning, as we go side by side in the GTS class. They're having a lot of fun, aren't they? And that is the 51 and 53 car, so Iraj Alexander and Andrea Cecchilero. Believe it or not, they're teammates. And they are currently fighting for 14th and 15th position. Not too far away now from the halfway stage of this race. Tony Villander continues to lead 6.2 seconds. the leader in the GTS class. Well, there's Andrea Montemini, who has rejoined after his pit stop in 13th. We will monitor the progress of Montermini for you. And again, if you are watching on the live.gtopen.net stream, then we've got live timing as well beneath the race feed, so you'll be able to check the progress of Andrea Montermini now that he's taken over at the wheel of the number 2 car, because I think that is a car that could really, James, come into play in the closing stage of the race. For now, though, we've got this fight for 3rd and 4th position. And if you were in Marco Holz's shoes, would you be on the team saying, shall I go for that move, or shall I just hold position until the pit stop?
No, well, the thing is, with these relatively short races, you can't really afford to hold position because the leader's going to get away. But for me, this area of the race now is a really interesting phase, because not only is the track changing, and people are now, as you can see, coming in to make the pit stops, but you've got the switch in the drivers, and now we know with Verlander giving over to Federico Leo, that's going to be a really key part of taking victory, is how quick Leo can get up to speed. And then I think it's actually going to be the rivalry between himself and Nick Tandy that's going to be, I think, the development over the next 10-15 minutes of this race.
Well, Lorenzo Bontempelli climbing into the wheel of the number 60 car. Bontempelli, the dentist by trade, thoroughly enjoys his racing, thoroughly enjoys his ice cream. We were having a chat with him at lunchtime over a couple of scoops of the finest gelato, as sliding wide coming up the hill. Iraj Alexander there in the Kessel racing car, elbowed aside by his teammate, Andrea Ciccolero. And they might both be getting a message from the team manager from the pit wall saying, come on lads, just cool it down a little bit please.
They are going to have to be very careful, because things like that cost you so much lap time. And the thing is, you can see one of the other pit stops coming in there, and they are going to slicks as well. So this is going to be a key part of the race in the number 4 Ferrari. So
the race leader, Tony Villander, is in, and it's Federico Leo who takes over on a car that had wet and now has slick tyres. So Villander's made the call. It's good enough for slicks. We'll see if the others follow suit and look to make the same change during their pit stop. And you just we didn't see the whole of Andrea Montermini's pit stop. I just wonder whether that number 2 car has gone out on slicks. I expect it probably has, which is why they made the early pit stop, given Andrea's relative experience. And as you were saying, as we were waiting for the race to start, James, now is the time when the teams will be looking at the timing screen, looking for the lap times of the cars that are changed to slicks. And if immediately Federico Leo goes out, starts setting blue sectors, starts setting purple sectors, they'll just have no option but to pull the car in.
But again, because these are relatively short races and we've only got 36 minutes left, you can't really afford to pit for a driver change and then come in again for slicks. So you were really going to have to stay with your first driver until the window for changing to slicks happened. And now we're seeing that pretty much all the teams will change to slicks now, because as we look out again through the blue skies of our commentary window, there's just zero spray on the pit straight. The racing line is actually fully dry, and I think we're going to start seeing the times now. So again, for those of you online watching with us at live.gtopen.net, you can see the timing screens, and again, we're still in the 2-minute point ones, but they are going to start coming down very quickly, and the people that haven't pitted at the right time are going to lose a huge amount of time.
So Federico Leo has taken over the car that was leading the race up to the pit stops, the 2011 FIA GT3 champion for the European Championship, former World Series by Renault racer, taking on at the head of the field. We are still, I think we've also had a pit stop as well for Michael Brozanitsky that we missed off camera. So that means that Marco Holzer has now moved in to lead the race. It's Rafael Giuria in second. They are yet to pit. Then we've seen into the pit lane number 4 car, Federico Leo, and also number 11 car that was Philip Pater is now Michael Brozanitsky. And actually Pater and Brozanitsky have gained a lot of time on the number 4 car through the pit stops. You could just see the yellow car at the back of that last shot. And that gap, yes, there he is. And that gap has come down, James, from 6 seconds to probably 2.
Yeah, they've definitely made time out, and you can see how Federico Leo is struggling for traction on the way out of turn 13. But the key thing is as well, as far as I know, these teams don't have tyre warmers for these tyres. So these are going cold, hard slicks on a damp track. And that is when the pressure really starts to tell. So hopefully Federico Leo, I know him reasonably well. I did run a 3.5 against him. But he's only in his second year at GTs. And this is the time of a race where the pressure is really on. It's very easy for him to make a mistake.
This is the time when you move from what you can do on Gran Turismo at home to what a professional racing driver can do on very tricky conditions, hard slick tyres. We're at the halfway stage of the race. The pits are abuzz with driver changes. We've got a drive-through penalty for the number 18 car for pit lane speeding, and the race gets worse and worse for the Moser, Rafael Unzurungaza. He started from the pit lane, and he's now managed to pick up a drive-through penalty for pit lane speeding. Now, what sort of times are we seeing coming from Federico Leo? Michael Brozanitsky. It's going to take a couple of laps for those tyres to get up to temperature, and then we'll begin to see the pace. Brozanitsky, you'd argue, maybe not quite as quick as Federico Leo in that number 4 car. He exits the hairpin at turn 5 now, begins the climb into the undulations, which make up the second phase of the lap. Marco Holzer remaining out on track. He must be due for his pit stop very shortly. Hand over to Nick Tandy. He's bottled up, trying to put the lap onto Andrea Montermini, and Montermini, since his pit stop, has slipped a little bit down the order, and into the pits they come, and that's why Montermini was struggling. He went back out onto track on wet, so he is coming in to make the switch to slicks. Marco Holzer to hand over to Nick Tandy. He is going to be able to do that driver change and tyre change in one fell swoop. What a disaster for Montermini, and Miguel and Juan Manuel Lopez in the number 2 car. Right, Nick Tandy gets into the cockpit. Marco Holzer out, slick tyres go on. Nick Tandy, this really is a key campaign for this year. Into the pit lane comes Andrea Montermini, and those slick tyres going on. Wouldn't want to be Juan Manuel Lopez after this race, because they were the first of the front runners to pit, but they only pitted a lap, 2 laps before the rest of them did, who made the switch to slicks.
Yeah, that's been a bad call there. They really didn't make the most of going out and staying out on wets. They should have just stayed with their original driver and waited for the window, which is like we said. But as we can see, that the outlaps on the slicks have proven to be very important. We've got Federico Leo, whose outlap was about a 3:02, and then we had the other Ferrari that was that Filippetta brought in was actually 2 seconds quicker on his outlap on those slicks. As you can see, the Tandy Porsche now exiting the pit lane as well. So this is going to be a key area. Has staying out on those wets while other people have struggled to bring their slicks up to temperature, has that gained him track position?
Well, all will be revealed over the next 30 minutes. Still out on track is Daniel Zampieri. He is the GTS leader. He's also the race leader in the race overall. And so this is a very impressive performance from Zampieri. He will be handing over very shortly to Michael Dalla Stella. Federico Leo continues to circulate, and this is now coming together for Leo. He's done that car's best sector 1. That's a brilliant illustration as they went through 7 and 8 there, James. Yes, it's good for slicks, but only on the racing line.
Yeah, you can see now that the times are now starting to come down. We've got Leo on a 56.7, and that's some 4 seconds quicker than they were lapping on the wets with the dry track as well. So, but like you said, the key is you've got to push hard, but you cannot go offline now. All those areas where you were looking to grip offline, if you try that on the slicks, then you're not going to stop for a long time, and you'll be out into the gravel. So you've really got to see there the dry line that's emerging now. They've really got to be careful not to run too far and drop a wheel onto the damp part.
So we are beginning to reach the end of the pit stop window, and after that we'll know exactly how everything sorts itself out as Nick Tandy tries to find his way past Andrea Montermini, although that has now changed to Juan Manuel Lopez, and there's been a fair amount of disputes between who's in that car. I thought it was Andrea Montermini who was getting into the car at the pit stop, but we'll find out in due course. Anyway, Nick Tandy puts a lap on that car. Now what can Nick do? The former British Formula 3 racer, very successful racing in the Porsche Super Cup as well, supporting the Formula 1 World Championship events. And he is going to do his utmost to close in on the cars ahead of him. We'll find out at the end of this lap exactly the deficit that he has got to Federico Leo. Leo in the number 4 car, he is essentially the race leader because we've still got 3 cars towards the head of the field. Daniel Zampieri in the 44 car, Cesar Campanchao in the number 81 Audi R8, and also the number 7 car, Giacomo Piccini in the Porsche. They all have got to make their pit stop. The remainder of the pack have pretty much done that, and then after those 3 have pitted in, none of whom are really contenders for the overall race victory. We'll see how this is going to shuffle itself out into the final 30 minutes of what has been a very exciting opening race to the International GT Open season. Close battles going on all the way through the order. We've got the second of the Team Nova driver Audi R8s. That's Carlos Vieira in the number 80 machine onto the tail of the Auto Lando Sport Porsche, and that is going to be Marco Mappelli, who is now at the wheel of that one. In fact, I think it may just be pulling his pit lane, in which case it's Archie Hamilton hand over to Mappelli as we've got the Good Sense Racing, while the Lamborghini's moving to the inside of the Audi down into turn 1. Plenty of grip off line down the hill into turn 1, and gaining the place is Patrick Piera. That shows certainly that if you want to overtake, you can do it into turn 1 now. The grip is there offline. So they are fighting a little bit lower down the order. 9th and 10th place is this battle.
And then we can see now Federico Leo sticking in his best lap of the race on a 53.4. And this is really the key part of the race. He's kept that gap to second place quite good. It's about 5.7 seconds now, which is similar to the gap that Vilander had before the stop. So they haven't actually lost anything out of the change.
Well, next time around, we'll see Federico Leo moving into lead the race, because into the pit lane, we've got Daniel Zampieri. Into the pit lane as well, we have got Cesar Campenciaro. And actually into the pits, have we got Federico Leo, Michael Brusnitsky? That's what it's showing on our timing screen. We will update you in due course. So it could be that we certainly saw that Leo was putting on slick tyres. So I don't know what the problem is for him. Into the pit lane is Michael Brusnitsky. Now that is far from scheduled. In fact, I know what it is. In fact, what we're seeing is that they're not allowed, I don't think, to change. Well, they're doing the driver change and the refueling separately to the tyre change, and the reason for that is that you don't believe that you can refuel and change tyres in the same pit stop, and that's what it's coming down to. So this is why we're seeing this run of pit stops. All of a sudden, that means that the number 2 car of Andrea Montermini is potentially going to be the car that we're going to be looking to in the closing stages here, because they've got those pit stops out of the way in the early stages. So the race really being turned on its head. The need to make that separate tyre change alongside the fuel stop. This is Patrick Piet on to the tail of Miguel Ramos. Through he goes.
You can see there how good the traction was on these slicks of the Porsche. And like you said, with the pit stops, with you pitting early for the tyres, you're just out of the window with the fuel. So it has forced them now into making a second stop.
It really has. And at what point, in that case, will we see Nick Tandy ducking into the pits, or is he going to take the opportunity to run that car down to the fumes? And these multiple pit stops confusing our timing screen just a little bit. All the while, that means that it's now Michael Dalla Stella who is showing as the race leader, with then Mikko Escalainen in second place in the Audi R8. Federico Leo is up into third, but we'll, I think, have to wait for this round of pit stops to come to an end before we can be absolutely certain as to who's where. All the while, Nick Tandy is on to complete another lap, and this is going to be that car's best lap of the race, a 1:50.1. Now the times are coming down substantially. They're 10 seconds a lap faster, James, on these slick tyres than they were on the wets.
Yeah, this just shows how having the right tyre at the right time is so important. If you've been on these tyres a little bit too early, the car is just so clumsy, you can't even get the car to stop or turn in. But the minute they're in their operating temperatures, you can see just really pushing the traction area out of turn 3 there. The minute you get the tyre working in the right window, they're just so much quicker.
So Nick Tandy is now in the lead of the race. They are on lap 21. We've got 26 minutes remaining, and we have got Alexander Taukanitsa looking to the inside and making hefty contact with the 57 car, turning across him, Michele Rugolo, and Alexander Taukanitsa spinning around. We only saw it from one angle. That gap never looked like it was going to stay open, did it?
No, he was coming from a little bit too far back for me, and then again, you get to a certain point and you just have to turn in, and contact was made. But again, as you're looking out the window here, the sun is still shining, but have we got more rain on the way in the distance?
Yeah, the clouds beginning to brew out into the distance, none of which will be of any concern immediately to the drivers in the cockpit. They'll just be looking to pound in the laps and go as quickly as possible. Putting a lap on to the McLarens. Into the pit lane comes the Ford GT, and that is going to be fairly routine pit stop. Disappointing race. What is certainly one of the largest, loudest cars in the race as well. Matteo Stumpf and Rui Lapper really kicking up a storm. Some very beautiful sounding cars throughout the field. The Villar Racing Aston Martin as well sounds very impressive. Nick Tandy continuing to improve his lap times. He's just done a 1:48.1. The fastest lap of the race is a 1:47.255, and that was actually set by the AF Corsa car, number 56. I suspect that was Nicky Kadai, just as he came out of the pits. Late addition to the entry this weekend, Nicky Kadai, very quick driver, very experienced GT driver, and he's currently in 8th position. So the order as things currently stand is it's leading the race is number 8, Nick Tandy. 2nd place is number 44, Michael Dalla Stella. 3rd place is the 81, Audi R8, Mikko Escalina now at the wheel. 4th place, number 11, Michael Broznicki, who crosses the line, completes lap in 5th place. We've got 82, and that is the Good Sense Racing Lamborghini Giada. Patrick Piera currently the pilot. And Broznicki, though, now that we've got slightly updated times, he is into 2nd position. So if we work on the assumption that Nick Tandy's going to have to make another pit stop, he's now got 40 seconds advantage at the head of the field. Then we've got Michael Broznicki, he is in 2nd. Federico Leo is in 3rd, 6.2 seconds back, with Patrick Piera right on his tail, a further 4/10 back. So the fight really is for 2nd, 3rd and 4th, because 3rd and 4th places are closing in on man in 2nd, Michael Broznicki, the tune of about a second a lap. There is the number 4 car, Federico Leo, trying to carve through the field. You can just see turning through the front of your screen as well, Michael Broznicki. We may have had a bit of a wobble for Patrick Piera in the Good Sense Racing Lamborghini, because he just seems to have dropped back a little bit from the tail of Leo. And yes, the gap, it was down by over a second last time around. It may come down even more on this tour of the circuit. So Michael Broznicki, the gentleman driver, though, putting in a very fine start to this race. He was 14th in last year's International GT Open. He was also 2nd in the Dubai 24 Hours back in 2011. A long-time competitor in the International GT Open. His best year, arguably 2009, when he was the GTS champion. And he's putting that experience to very good use at the moment in 2nd place. He's currently circulating some 2 seconds a lap slower than Nick Tandy, who remains at the very head of the field. So down through turn 15 and on to complete another lap, and we'll see what the gap between Tandy and Broznicki is. I suspect it's gone out. How much by? Don't know. So through goes Broznicki, does a 1:50.4. Into the background and across the line goes Federico Leo, a 1:48.4. So down by 2 seconds now is the gap from 2nd to 3rd. And this chase is well and truly on between Federico Leo and Michael Broznicki. And for a driver like Broznicki, James, you're being caught. Do you want to know that that gap's coming down, or do you just want to get on with doing your own thing?
I mean, it's driver preference, really. I always like to know as much information from the team, the gap in front and the gap behind. But the fact that he'll be told on the radio that he's just been caught by 2 seconds a lap probably will make him try to push those braking areas. We see a big lock-up and a spin by the number 12 Aston Martin into turn 3.
Yeah, I just wonder whether something's maybe gone wrong on that car. Matteo Malucelli, who has put the car on pole for tomorrow's race, having the lock-up and the spin. So Michael Broznicki well into the traffic now. The gap between himself and Leo is 4.1 seconds, flashing his lights as Broznicki is anxious that those slightly slower cars up the road ahead of him get out of the way. He cannot afford to lose any time. He's got 2 that are battling amongst themselves. He goes round the pair of them as he turns down through turn 11. It's now up to Federico Leo to try and squeeze through. Thus far on this lap, Leo has gained about a second. Broznicki's going to struggle, though, because he's really caught some of that traffic at the wrong time. He carves past the Porsche into turn 13, on towards turn 14. He's got a couple of cars still darting ahead of him, and Federico Leo will not be too happy about this. He's finally able to get past the number 6 car, Miguel Amaral. He clears and down the hill, and everything he gained on that last lap, James, I wonder if he has lost this time around. So we're about to see Broznicki and Leo complete the lap. Michael Broznicki surges through a 1:49.8, so the track really coming to him, and Leo 1:49.6, so he was quicker by 0.2 of a second, but they're now through that group of traffic and the chase well and truly on. And that last lap, the track getting significantly drier again. Pretty much everybody in the field lapping a second quicker.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, it's a lot easier when it gets to this phase of the race. All the pit stops are out of the way. The tyres now have come into their own. There's no question really of rain again, I don't think. And now it's just a case of just hitting those qualifying laps, just being absolutely flat out. We can see Leo now doing this. I mean, he only gained 0.2 of a second on that last lap because of traffic, but it's a lot easier for someone in his situation who can see his target in front of him and just chase him down every lap.
It really is. He's passed one of the Spanish GT cars running as part of the grid this weekend with the International GT Open. It's still Nick Tandy who leads it by 43 seconds over Michael Broznicki, with then this man in 3rd place, Federico Leo. 4th place, we've got the 82 car of Patrick Pereira, and then in 5th place is number 56, that's Nicky Kadai. And Cadai in there, of course, a Ferrari leading the GTS class at the moment. So this is a very impressive performance for, hey, of course, got cars on the podium in both classes. And what can Federico Leo do about closing in on Brosnitsky? We're into the final third of the lap here, and again, Leo is already a second quicker than Brosnitsky on this lap. So down through turn 14, the pair of them come. Lights ablaze, somewhat superfluously from Federico Leo. It's really to warn the car's ahead, and now that gap is visibly a lot less than it was at the start of the lap. Conference on the Manthe team pit wall. Marco Holzer and the team know what's going on as Nick Tandy continues in imperious fashion at the head of the field. And we thought after qualifying that this looked good for them. Very strong driver lineup, very well sorted car. And Tandy, pretty much the fastest man on the circuit.
Yeah, Ben, I was just going to say there, even though Leo took 1.2 seconds out of Brosnitsky, Nick Tandy still lapping almost a second and a half quicker than the two of them. He's now still consistently in the 47.6s. Brosnitsky lapping on the 49.2s, Leo on the 48 dead. So even though he's out the front and under seemingly no pressure, he's still now got a lead of up to 44.5 seconds there.
Good little battle lower down the order. This is for 24th place. Alvaro Fontes in the 99 Ferraris. We've got slowing Federico Leo. So Federico Leo is in trouble here. The number 4 car that was in third place and challenging for second is slowing dramatically, and he is going to tumble down the order because we're only at turn 5. It's a long, long way back to the of course pit. What the problem is, I know not. He's
now back up to speed by the looks of it.
Nicky Cadai. Here is Leo, who's not up speed.
I mean, from the outside, Ben, there's nothing that really jumps out of us. There's no puncture. Just seems to be cruising along, whether he's lost drive of some sort. But that's so disappointed. He was absolutely flying. He was guaranteed a podium, and now he's going to try his best to get back to the pit lane.
Yeah, so just point Federico Leo. We've got on our timing screen the word coming through that the team manager of car 8, and that is the race leading car, has been summoned to race control. So car 8 to race control. Now, I just wonder whether that is for a pit stop infringement potentially, because we've seen all the other cars, they made that driver change and tyre change, or they made the driver change, fuel stop, and then the tyre change. They have all done the 2 pit stops. We haven't seen Nick Tandy make 2 pit stops. We haven't seen the 4th place number 82 car, the Good Sense Racing Lamborghini of Patrick Pereira, and they have also been summoned to race control. They've not made the 2 pit stops, whereas everybody else has, according to the regulations. Well, this will run and run. We may see a penalty yet handed to the race leader, Nick Tandy. We have got 16.5 minutes remaining in the race. Okay, what about the other gaps to look for? Well, we've got Brosnitsky in second. He is a second a lap faster than Pereira in third. Nicky Cadai, let's remind you, in a GTS car, is lapping in a 1 minute 47.5. He's got Patrick Piet in the IMSA Performance Malmö Porsche up into 5th place. So they had a very disappointing qualifying session this morning. It's really come together for them though in the race. They're up into 5th, and he and Cadai circulating pretty closely together. It's going to be a big, big ask. I think they're going to close those gaps down between now and the end of the race. It might just be possible. There is Federico Leo, who's out of the car, and understandably extremely frustrated with that, his race. Fortunately for him, coming to end, Nicky Cadai is trying to car through the traffic here, as is the car just behind him, Patrick Piet, and you can see how badly Cadai is losing out, because we've got this 3-way tussle immediately ahead of him, and this is now the fight for 4th and 5th, which is coming alive, and trying to lap cars going 3 abreast is almost impossible. They make contact and actually eliminate themselves from that, because 3 abreast in the hairpin was never going to work. They then rejoin. Patrick Piet is trying to pick his way past them, which he does. Now, will the Good Sense Lamborghini display just that through turn 15? No, not really. So Patrick Piet losing out a little bit of ground. These Dyson cars just up the road ahead of him. So through they come, lower down the order. So Nicky Cadai is now up into 3rd position. And then, in fact, that Good Sense Racing Lamborghini, that's why they move aside. They're racing for position. And so that's Pereira, who has slipped down to 4th. Drive-through penalty, Nick Tandy. We thought this is what was going to happen. So it's a drive-through penalty, and it is to do with the tyre change and refuelling.
But again, more interestingly, Ben, will a drive-through bring him still out in front of the rest of the field. He's got a 46-second lead, and I know it's a long pit lane here at Portimao, but it's going to be very, very close when he comes out of the pit lane.
And we've also got the same penalty as well for the 82 car, the Good Sense Racing Lamborghini, which is the car we're seeing on screen now. So they have also picked up that drive-through penalty for refuelling and making the tyre change at the same time. It's against the regulations. Well, where will this bring Nick Tandy out? His advantage, not around, is about 49 seconds. And if I'm being honest, the other teams might just be of the view that a drive-through penalty isn't quite the equivalency of another pit stop. This may be debated after the race. So we'll see just how much time Nick Tandy loses through that drive-through penalty. Patrick Piet on the tail of the Lamborghini, which of course has got a service drive-through penalty. So Piet here, he'll have to on the race saying, whatever you do, don't do anything too rash here, because that Lamborghini is going to be heading into the pit lane very shortly. I guess, though, for Piet, he wants to finish third in the race outright, and he looks the outside of the Lamborghini, down the hill into turn 14. He tries around the outside of the hairpin. Brave driving from the Frenchman. He couldn't quite do it, so he's not going to try up the inside into turn 15, is he? He does! Brilliant manoeuvre from Patrick Piet. Up the inside into turn 15. He moves into fourth position, and that was audacious stuff. The Lamborghini peels into the pit lane anyway for its drive-through penalty, but that, James, was a superb move from Patrick Piet.
That was a great move. I mean, Piet is absolutely flying. He's one of the quickest cars on track now as he makes his way down to turn 1, and he's really in the groove. Only 12 minutes left, and the group kind of behind the first two it is very, very close, and he's got to now make these times count, and the grip that he's really got to push towards the end of the race now.
Miguel Ramos in the number 10 car we're watching on screen now. He is in 6th position. He is 2 seconds a lap quicker than the cars ahead of him, so Ramos is driving himself into the picture as well. The Portuguese driver who won here at Portimao last year, let's not forget, as we've got BMW that's just pulled to the side of the circuit. They're out of turn 4.
And again, Ben, if I was Nick Tandy, and here we are, I was just going to say, if I was Nick Tandy, I'd be making that drive-through penalty now, because that was the first lap where his lead actually decreased from 46 to 45.5 seconds. And again, I'm not sure that this is going to be enough of a penalty. I think he's still going to come out easily in front of the rest of the field. Yeah, Nick Tandy cruising down the pit lane. He has probably lost something of the magnitude of 15 to 20 seconds there, so his lead has halved, but no more than that. He is about to rejoin the action, which he does now. Out he goes. Also, immediately ahead of him, serving a drive-through penalty for pit lane speeding, there was Johnny Molan in the Lotus Evora. So Tandy rejoins the race in the lead, and now with 11.5 minutes to go, this is looking very good for Nick Tandy and Marco Holzer to claim the victory in the opening race of the season. Second place is the number 11 car. Michael Broznicki tries to squeeze past the Moser. I'm not sure that Rafael Unzuragaza saw him there. He now looks back to the inside of the Mosler. Through he goes, and Broznicki puts another lap on the Mosler. He is 42 seconds back from Nick Tandy at the end of the last lap, but we won't, until the end of the lap they're currently on, actually see just how much time Nick Tandy lost as a result of that drive-through penalty. Up into third position now. We've got the number 56 AF Corsa Ferrari 458 of Nicky Kadai, who's taken over from Stefano Bizzarri. So Nicky Kadai, third in the race overall, leads the GTS class. Fourth in the race, we've got number 16, and that is Patrick Piet. And then fifth place, number 10, Miguel Ramos. Here is Nicky Kadai turning through the hairpin, beginning the long climb up the hill towards the 6th corner on the circuit. He is just coming up to put the lap on to Stephen Earle in the Kessel Racing Ferrari. And Nicky Kadai should get past Stephen Earle fairly easily, although Stephen Earle, 5 years in a row, he was the American Ferrari Challenge champion back from 1996 through to 2000. Loves his racing, loves his Ferraris, and gets quicker year on year here in the GT Open. Well, I'm not too sure that he saw Nicky Kadai over the crest, because actually, James, when you're lapping drivers here or being lapped at Portimao, because of all the crests, it's actually quite hard to place where the cars behind you and their closing distance. There is. I mean, this circuit really does favour, as you can see here, the cutback manoeuvres, and you can really race here side by side. The track's very wide, like most of the Grand Prix circuits now, but it does mean if you can stay out of trouble on the way in, you can make the cutback on the guy around you and get a very good exit. And again, similar to all the Grand Prix circuits that we race on nowadays, they're huge long straight, so you really have to have good traction on the exits. Team manager of car 44, which is Kessel Racing, Michael Dalla Stella and Daniel Zampieri,
has been summoned immediately to race control.
And also, just off screen, we've got Matteo Malancelli in the Aston Martin has just set the fastest lap on a 46.1. So again, that's just goes to show that ahead for tomorrow for race 2, that car has got great race pace.
Yeah, absolutely, and actually they are not too far adrift of the 44 cars. That's a good battle that's going on screen. Meanwhile, Nicky Cadai in third position continues his march around the circuit, and these cars are absolutely gorgeous, and the undulations of the Portimao circuit, you can watch them just circulating all day long. Now, what about PA closing in on Cadai? Right, that gap is coming down, so watch for the Porsche. We're following the Ferrari at the moment in third place, but Patrick PA in the Porsche is 2 seconds a lap quicker. We'd expect that, of course, because the Porsche there at the back of your shot, that is a Super GT car. It should be 1.5, 2 seconds a lap faster than the GTS class, so we could see the change for third position in the remaining 8.5 minutes of this race. There are battles throughout the field. It really is proving to be a dramatic start to the season as Marco Mappelli puts a lap on the Ford GT, and Mappelli is second in class as the GT goes off again, would you believe it? And so Rui Lapa, I don't think will be doing any more laps because something broke there, because the car just suddenly veered across. He's come to a halt.
I mean, it looked like that from the outside, but I think he actually just got on the damp part of the circuit on the outside of that turn 2 kink, and the minute you lean on that left rear tyre, I mean, he had someone up the inside of him as well, but the minute you lean on that left rear on the damp track, then you've just got zero grip and around it goes. But just for those of you who are watching at home and you haven't got the timing screens, we've got Cadai in P3 with a 48.4, and Pile now lapping a 46.9, so he's going to be right with him soon. And
we caught the end of that instant. He actually tagged Andrea Montermini as he spun around, so Andrea Montermini in 8th position. And again, Montermini, one of the quickest drivers on the circuit. He's lapping consistently in the 1 minute 46s. If this race had another 10 minutes to run, the gaps would be coming down, and we would see lots of changes of place, I have no doubt, between now and the end of the race. So Marco Mappelli, 7th in the race. He and Archie Hamilton are on course to claim 2nd in the GTS class as a result of what has been a very strong performance. I think they'll have been somewhat disappointed to see Nicky Cadai, though, up the road ahead of them. But this, of course, let's not forget, is Archie Hamilton's first race in the International GT Open. Marco Mappelli, a fair bit more experienced. Overall, the Autolando Sports Squad will be pretty pleased with how things have gone thus far. Climbing up the hill and on to complete another lap goes Mappelli, as Nick Tandy remains at the head of the field. His advantage is 16.2 seconds over Michael Brosnitsky. Marco Holzer watches on the pit wall.
Yeah, Marco looking very nervous there. He's kind of hoping that they get to the end okay, but you can see as well that Nick's just cruising now. He's dropped into the 48s with, like we said, Pile lapping in the 46s, and yeah, I can't help but think that this is going to kind of pan out after the checkered flag. I think for whatever reason the pit mix up there, they've been penalised, but for me that there's obviously a penalty, but it hasn't penalised them enough if they've still come out in the lead.
Well, we will see what debate takes place in the pit lane after the race. There will be debate nonetheless in the pit lane after the race, because that is the way that any motorsport pit lane works, as Nick Tandy dodges the bodywork from Andrea Montermini's number 2 Ferrari. We have got less than 6 minutes remaining, and yeah, debris on track at the exit of turn 2, so that is essentially going to throw a yellow flag through the turn 1 and 2 section of the circuit. And Tandy just consistently pulling clear of Michael Brosnitsky.
You can see there, Ben, that drive-through penalty costing 25.7 seconds for Tandy.
So Brosnitsky just a little bit too far adrift. Tandy able now to drive well within limits of that car. The battle to watch is this one, with Patrick Piet still in pursuit of Nicky Cadai. Cadai is just up the pace a little bit over the last lap, and Piet is on the limit trying to chase down the 56 Ferrari. Beautiful shot there. The sliding of the rear of the Porsche. Cadai just putting a lap on to Alexander Taukanitsa, with Patrick Piet the next man to do that. So they're through sector 1 in an identical time to about a 1/10 of a second, so there's very little between the pair of them through sector 1. So Piet, he is tantalisingly close, as we've got Montermini, who's just come past us with the Ferrari shedding parts and smoking. So Andrea Montermini in the number 2 car, you can't see it on your screen, but he's just come past the commentary box, could be a casualty.
Yeah, but it looked like engine smoke, but I think it is actually left rear tyre rubbing from that contact, so he's going to have to be very careful. Luckily there's only 4 minutes left, but very careful that left rear tyre doesn't give out.
Indeed he will. Now what can Patrick Piet do? identical times through sector 2 between Nicky Callow and Patrick Piet. The gap between the end of the last lap was 2.9 seconds, and there is the Montherminy, and it's a puncture, isn't it? And I think the tyre has gone, possibly, something certainly dragging. Yes, it's a rear puncture, rear left puncture for Andrea Montherminy. That's a good spot, James, and the worst possible place on the track for it to go down the pit straight. It is going to be a very long 4.5 kilometres back to the pits for Andrea Montherminy. He was in 8th position. Right across the line goes Nicky Cadai, and he is now 2.1 seconds clear of Piet, who had a brilliant run through sector 3. He took 0.7 of a second out of Callow through sector 3. He's going to run out of laps here, though. He is going to really have to drive out of his skin if he is going to bring down that gap to Nicky Callow and challenge for 3rd in the race overall, although of course he is on course for 3rd in the Super GT class. The overall race leader, Nick Tandy, who has really backed off actually in the last couple of laps. Michael Broznicki 2 seconds faster than him last time around. I'm sure that that's largely Nick driving within himself rather than anything particularly going wrong with the car.
Yeah, Ben, he's got 14 seconds in his pocket, so it really is a case of not making a mistake now. They're obviously confident that they're going to keep hold of this victory. And I thought maybe with Pilet and Cadai lapping similar pace the last few laps, that maybe Pilet had just pushed his tyres too hard trying to catch him, and then now they've passed their best. But like you said, that 46.8 on Pilet's last lap is a fantastic lap at this stage of the race. It
really is. We are into the final 3 minutes, and it's going to be the 33rd lap of the race completed by Nick Tandy. Through he goes, and this takes us in to the penultimate lap of the race. So we're going to have a 35 lapper here for the opening of the International GT Open season. Right, another view of the spin here. So around goes Lapper. He just tags Andrea Montherminy, and the incident's under investigation, and there was nothing Montherminy could do. And you talk about luck in sport, you talk about luck in racing, and that for Andrea Montherminy was just pure bad luck. Yeah, it was.
He'd made the move down the inside quite easily through turn 2 into 3. But it's just the fact that 4GT, maybe it locked a rear on its downshift, spun the car to the right, and the front of the bumper just collected his rear tyre, and that's obviously damaged the valve or just taken the tyre off the rim, and you can see the result.
So Andrea Montherminy, he continues to circulate. He's still slipping down the order all the while, unfortunately, as Nick Tandy, penultimate lap of the race. What about the fight for 3rd and 4th? Gap is still coming down. It's 1.7 seconds in that battle, so we could yet see a change for 3rd place in the race overall, and 2 Porsches on the podium here in the opening race of the year. But in the Super GT class and the race overall, it's Nick Tandy and Marco Holzer looking very good, with just 1.5 laps remaining to claim first blood in the 2012 International GT Open. And this has been one of those topsy-turvy races that you sometimes get and always enjoy in GT racing. A wet start, drama with the pit stops, confusion about the regulations, and at the end you have one of the strongest cars in the race and a very strong driver pairing shaking out at the head of the field and looking well set to claim the victory. So down through turn 15 and on to start the final lap of the race comes Nick Tandy, up over the tabletop, snatching 6th gear, and then a long run down the front straight for Nick Tandy. He's going to come onto the tail of the Ginetta G50 of Luis Villabla on the last lap, but he should be able to clear that Ginetta fairly easily. He certainly won't be taking any chances. So let's pick his way past him as they go through the debris at turn 2. And Nick Tandy just very comfortable. He's still got 10.5 seconds advantage over Michael Broznicki. This has been a very fine drive, though, from Broznicki in 2nd place.
And you can see the Ferrari there with the damaged tyre just still creeping its way back, whether it's actually stopped on the side of the back straight behind the pit lane. But you could also see down into turn 1 there, Tandy flashing his lights at the traffic around him. The drivers actually have buttons in the car that they only have to press once that will actually flash the lights 4 or 5 times for them. And it is a great tool to try and make the guys aware in front of you that you're on your way through.
3rd place in the race overall, Nicky Cadai, and more bodywork has been shed down the start and finish straight past our commentary box. It's of no concern, though, to Nick Tandy, who's just a few corners from home here. It's been a very fine performance from him and Marco Holzer. And Nick, all he needs to do is just hope that everything holds together, avoid any silly mistakes, which I'm sure he won't make, as he exits turn 12 on towards turn 13 now. and then he's just got the downhill hairpin at 14, and then that plunging right-hander at turn 15 between himself and the checkered flag. So Nick Tandy accelerating into the final corner. It's been a super drive from Nick, and the checkered flag is ready and waiting for Nick Tandy to claim the win in the first race of the 2012 season in the International GT Open. He comes up over the crest, the checkered flag goes out, and it's the win for Nick Tandy. The team celebrate on the pit wall, and Tandy will be overjoyed with that. So Nick Tandy takes win, second place, an excellent drive from Michael Broznicki. The Kessel Racing Squad and Philip Pater, his co-driver, celebrate. And again, flashing the lights is Broznicki. Now what about Nicky Kadai and Patrick Piet? This is a super drive from Nicky Kadai. He's going to claim third in the race overall, and he is going to win the GTS class. A brilliant drive from Nicky Kadai and Stefano Bizzari to win the GTS class. Patrick Piet and Ramon Narach claim fourth place in the race overall and third in the Super GTs. Waiting for across the line now in fifth place, Miguel Ramos. He and Rafael Gianmaria claiming fifth, and they will be pleased with that solid point scoring start to the 2012 season for them. Shows just the advantage the top five have. We're still waiting for the sixth place car to come through as Marco Holzer celebrates on the pit wall, and James job done for the Manthey Racing Squad.
Yeah, like we said at the beginning of the race, I had them down as a very, very strong driver pairing, and this has just showed stayed out of trouble. Admittedly, they've had a drive-through penalty, but that just goes to show still with the last few laps of the race, cruising round, came home 7.5 seconds in front of the rest, and they really are now, they have put their stalls out. They're going to be a really, really difficult team to beat as the season develops.
They are going to be difficult to beat, but they have incurred the pit stop penalty. The top three cars in each class incur the pit stop penalty for tomorrow. And this is the replay, and it is the Ford GT. The legacy of the contact with Andrea Montermini. It has been, unfortunately, a race to forget for the ACL by Road Drive squad in the Ford GT. They have had all sorts of dramas along the way. The marshals, though, out on the curbside to applaud the race winner, Nick Tandy, with Marco Holzer having done the job in the early stages in the very tricky wet conditions. Nick Tandy took over at the pit stop and then did exactly what was required, banged in the quick laps early on, and then was able to manage his pace through to the checkered flag. And here is the final classification with the win for Holzer and Tandy. Second place, Broznicki and Philip Pater. Third place, Stefano Bizzari and Nicky Kadai. They win the GTS class. Fourth place for Narach and Piet. Mapelli and Hamilton, an excellent second in the GTSs from Daniel Zampieri and Michael Dalla Stella. And they were ninth overall. Also coming up very well, the Ombra Racing team, Mario Cordoni and Lorenzo Bontempelli, to take 10th place in the race overall and fourth in the GTS class. The fastest lap was actually set by Alexander Taukanitsa Jr. in the very closing stage of the race, so 1 minute 45.926, and with an eye towards tomorrow, that is looking very good for Alexander Taukanitsa Senior and Junior. Up into 16th place came the Molen Puglisi Lotus Evora, and I think they'll be pleasantly pleased with that, having had a drive-through penalty along the way as well in that car. It's been developing throughout the course of the weekend. Good finish for Stephen Earle and Freddie Kramer. They came home in 21st position, just behind the AF course pairing in 20th place of Martin Lanting and Henrik Harner. And actually, despite these very difficult conditions, not too many casualties. Classified 29th, and therefore well out of the points, Federico Leo and Tony Villander. And for them and the AF course team, James, that's a race that got away from them because they looked well set for winning that.
Really was. They had the pace at the beginning. Tony was absolutely flying in the wet conditions. As you can see, Nick getting out of the car there, looks really happy with himself. He's had a good day's work. But back to Villander and Leo. Yeah, that really is a missed result. It's such a shame when you don't get off to a good start in the championship, but I'm sure they can bounce back from that.
It really is. Every point matters in any championship, and unfortunately for the pole sitters, they didn't make it to the checkered flag today. That man did, Nick Tandy, and he is heading through Parc Ferme to greet the Manthey Racing team. He jogs over to them now, and I think there's going to be some celebrations. Nick Tandy absolutely overjoyed. Here Marco Holzer embrace. don't think they were expecting that. They really are very, very pleased with how they went. So in the Drivers' Championship, it's 22 points for Marco Holzer and Nick Tandy, with then Philip Pater, Stefano Pizzari, Nicky Kadai, Michael Broznicki all on to 18 points. Patrick Pierre and Ramon Narach 12 points apiece. Then Archie Hamilton and Marco Mapelli on 11. Well, as ever, always a great atmosphere at the end of any GT race. It really, even these shorter races, 70 minutes is still a long way in very difficult conditions. So the drivers receiving the very warm applause of their team, their co-drivers, and the spectators we've got here at the Algarve circuit, the end of an entertaining race. So here we go with the highlights. It started, let's not forget, in single file behind the safety car, following a deluge just before the start. They all safely made it through turn one, despite some fairly ambitious attempts along the way. And then the day started badly for the Ford GT. They kept it out of the barriers, as we saw one of the early front runners spinning around, Miguel Angel Del Castro in the Porsche, trying to gain places in the early stages. He found himself spinning down the order in incredibly tricky conditions. The drivers really tiptoeing in the early stages. But then as the track began to dry out and the dry line emerged, we saw the order shuffling all over the place. Daniel Zampieri, the early leader in the GTS class, the 44 car. Superb drive from Zampieri in the early stages of the race, and he took a dominant lead in the class. We had a super tussle throughout the first half of the race between Philip Pater and Raffaele Gianmaria, with the pair of them swapping places pretty much on every corner. Kessel Racing as well had their adventures in the GTS class. Very, very close between the teammates. As the track dried out, it was Tony Villander who was the dominant leader for the first half of the race. Alexander Taukanitsa coming into contact shortly after the pit stops. That put him down the order. Also, we saw the spin as well for the Villeroy Racing Aston Martin. Carving up through the field, Patrick Pierre in the Porsche from disappointing qualifying. He gained places. Andrea Montermini, his race fortunately ruined by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But after the pit stops, even with a drive-through penalty, it was Nick Tandy who emerged as the dominant leader, and it was Nick Tandy who claimed the first win of the 2012 season, with the win in the GTS class going to Stefano Pizzari and Nicky Kadai after a storming drive from both of them. Hot work for Nick Tandy. The door open on the slowing down lap. The drivers getting ready to head on to the podium for the first time in 2012. Philip Pater, he's smiling. He looks a little bit pensive there. But here Michael Broznicki will be very pleased with the overall performance. Broznicki
next time only first.
Giving the thumbs up to the camera. Tandy and Marco Holzer debriefing the race, but smiles all around. It's always that bit easier to do the debrief when you've come through and taken the checker flag. All smiles on the podium, plenty of discussion about the race. So we've got the drivers being called on to the first podium of the season.
You can see some relief in some of the drivers' faces, Ben. It's always good to get off to a good start. You'd always, you'd bite someone's hand off to have a podium guaranteed at the first race, and these guys, it's just the perfect start. They know what car they've got underneath them, and now they can really get on with looking at tomorrow's race.
So on to the top step of the podium come Marco Holzer and Nick Tandy. Smiles all around, handshakes all around for our first podium of the 2012 season. Second place, Michael Broznicki and Philip Pater. Third place, Stefano Pizzari and Nicky Kadai. The German national anthem there in honour of the winning team, Manthe Racing, and our race winners, Marco Holzer and Nick Tandy. Celebrating on the podium, about to get the winners' trophies, and then we will have the champagne celebrations. So first of all, the third place trophy to Stefano Bizzarri and Nikki Kadai.
Mr. Fildus Avery represents Dunlop Motorsport Europe.
Fildus Avery from Dunlop Motorsport Europe presenting the second place trophies to Michael Broznicki and Philip Pater.
Mr. Paulo Pinheiro, CEO, the winner team.
And then the winners' trophies for Nick Tandy and Marco Holzer, hoisted aloft by the race winners. And a very welcome trophy for Manthe Racing. They've worked very hard for that this weekend, and they claim the first team trophy of the season. And now, presentation's done, photographers scatter. It means that it's time for some champagne. Philip Pater, well, he didn't get the chance to make the good start to the race. He was first off the line, though, with getting that champagne uncorked. And the team's saying, well, can you drop the bottle down to us now, please? We've done the hard work for the day. Although, of course, they do have the second race tomorrow to prepare for, and that will be live once more on live.gtopen.net. So again, do tune in tomorrow in time for the second race of the weekend, and the first of two races that we'll have tomorrow from Portimao, together with the European F3 Open. Nice slow motion shot there of Stefano Bizzarri and Nikki Kadai's Ferrari 458 Italia GT3 that was third. The second place car, the spiderweb design for Michael Broznicki and Philip Pater. And then, James, it has just been the perfect start to the season for Marco Holzer and Nick Tandy.
It has. They were maybe a little bit disappointed after qualifying, obviously with the Ferrari domination of the first session, but they've really come through in that race. They kept out of trouble. They reacted very well to the pit stops. They've come through with that drive-through penalty as well, which cost them 25 seconds and still win by a 7-second lead. So it's, like I said, it's such a good way to start the championship, and it just gives everybody in the team so much confidence, and I just see them going on from strength to strength, really.
Absolutely, it's been a super start to the championship from the International GT Open. Tomorrow's race gets underway at 12:30, and we very, very much hope that you'll be able to join us then for the second round of the 2012 International GT Open. But for now, from myself, Ben Evans, and James Walker alongside me, as the podium celebrations continue with the GTS podium first of all, and a second visit to the podium for Stefano Bizzarri and Nikki Kadai. An excellent second place for Archie Hamilton and Marco Mappelli. And then in third place, Michael Dalla Stella and Daniel Zampieri. 6 happy drivers on the podium, 3 different teams, 2 marks a car. And AF Course getting to celebrate on the top step of the podium.
Mr. Zvolkatita, the third place operation, gives the trophy to Daniele Zampieri, Michele Darastelli.
And again, the trophy, Daniel Zampieri wearing the look of somebody who thinks that was one that got away from him, because he was a long way clear in the GTS class battle at mid-race distance, and when you're in a race-winning position, third place is somewhat disappointing.
To the winning team, Stefano Bizzarri, Nicola Caldi.
So another round of trophies for Nikki Kadai and Stefano Bizzarri, and AF Corsa claiming what I imagine will be the first of several team winner trophies this season. They're certainly overjoyed with that.
Archie Hamilton there looking very pleased with his day's work. It's been great to see him back in the car. Know Archie reasonably well from training together in Oxford, and he's worked hard on getting this deal together, and it's great to see him now in GTs this year.
really is. So the drivers deciding not to celebrate with the champagne. They make good their escape. As we see the slow motion of Marco Mappelli and Archie Hamilton's car, which was consistent throughout the course of the race. And the class winners, Zari and Kadai, super drive from the pair of them, bring themselves really up into overall, not quite overall contention, but to finish on the podium, a very, very fine performance. And now we have got the podium for the Spanish GT runners that have been running alongside the International GT Open throughout the course of today's race, and all of them acquitting themselves very creditably indeed, and we'll hope to see some of them coming to join the International GT Open at future events throughout the course of the season, because we have seen some very strong performances, and it was coming through the Good Sense Racing team of Patrick Piera and Jose Teixeira, who claimed the victory in the Spanish GTs. And again, another round of trophies on the podium. And again, enthusiastic applause from the large crowd that's assembled at the foot of the podium to cheer these drivers on. They've performed extremely well, and it has been a super drive from the Good Sense Racing Lamborghini drivers to claim a very, very well-deserved victory and an excellent 6th place in the race overall. Super performance from them. And no hesitation here about heading straight to the champagne. They're immediately going to start celebrating, moving down to the front of the podium to spray the teams and supporters. You can always tell there's a second race coming the weekend because they're not spraying each other. They want to make sure those race suits don't fester overnight and smell of champagne tomorrow. So 6 very happy drivers on the podium from the Spanish GT Championship. And again, the photographers assembling en masse. To record for posterity their trip to the podium. Still the presentations continue. This is possibly the GT Light winners. So a very quick trip to the podium for them.